And as soon as we got there, there was kind of a crowd out there. And then my partner and I, we got out of the police car, and we heard this person yelling, "This way, officer, this way, over here." And what happened is we go into this doorway. And as soon as we walk into the doorway, we're in the pantry area. But as soon as you walked in, I mean, there was people all over the place. They were yelling and screaming. People were crying. And that person, he's saying, "He's over here, officer. He's right there. He's right here. He's over here, officer." And he's pointing. And what he's doing, and he's pointing to this pantry table. So we walk in, look directly to the right, and there's this group of people on top of a pantry table. And then we look, and there's one person has this one person in a headlock. And then there's one person, turned out to be Rosie Greer, was on top of this person laying on him with his body. And then there was somebody who was holding his legs. So, and then there was a group of other people that were in front. They were trying to hit him. You know, they were hitting him. And then, so the person that was telling us, "He's over here, officer, he's over here," he said, "That's him, that's him. He did it."
You're listening to Precinct 444, a podcast network from the National Law Enforcement Museum. Today we're bringing you an episode from the Encore series, where we revisit past museum programs and conversations.
Tonight we focus on the 44th anniversary of the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy by Sirhan Sirhan. Mr. Kennedy was the younger brother of President John F. Kennedy. He was a former Attorney General of the United States, a sitting United States Senator at the time of his death, and a candidate for President of the United States when he was shot on June 5th, 1968, 44 years ago today. And as has been the case with our earlier programs, this event tonight will be filmed by C-SPAN, made available to the public, and it will also be filmed by our film crew at the National Law Enforcement Museum, and it will become a permanent part of our museum archives. Let me introduce now very briefly the speakers for tonight's event, our witnesses to history. First, we have to my right, Evan Thomas, well-known writer and editor at Time and Newsweek, is a frequent guest on television news shows nationally and certainly here in the Washington, D.C. area. He's also the best-selling author of 8 books, including a biography on Robert F. Kennedy. It's entitled Robert Kennedy, His Life, and a copy of it I hold in my hand. And Evan, I certainly hope before you leave here tonight, we'll get you to autograph this for the National Law Enforcement Museum collection. We also have retired Los Angeles police officer Art Placencia. Art was the arresting officer of Sirhan Sirhan, and he was only 3 weeks out of the police academy when he made the arrest. So it was the beginning of a long and nearly 40-year career with the Los Angeles Police Department, and we're honored and very privileged to have Art with us here tonight. And to add some perspective, kind of frame the issue of protection of presidential candidates, the security that was in place then and the security that's in place now, much different, as we'll soon learn. And that's going to be given to us by Secret Service Special Agent Stephen Hughes. He's the special agent in charge of the Dignitary Protection Division of the United States Secret Service, and he's based here in Washington, D.C. So, Steve, thank you for joining us representing the U.S. Secret Service. Let's start now with Evan. The first question goes to you, and I'd like you to help frame the event and the issue before us tonight, the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy. Who was this man? And then let's talk about his assassin and how they came together on June 5th, 1968.
Robert Kennedy was an unusual candidate for president, but 1968 was a very unusual year. There was a sitting president, Lyndon Johnson. He had won by a landslide in 1964. But as some of you are old enough to remember, 1968 was a very volatile time. The Vietnam War was becoming increasingly unpopular. There were tremendous racial tensions, particularly in the cities. It was a very strange and scary time to a lot of Americans. And LBJ's presidency was under threat within his own party. The first person to take a run at him was Gene McCarthy, who definitely had the college students with him, the anti-Vietnam vote. Johnson at first didn't take McCarthy very seriously, and then McCarthy almost beat him in the New Hampshire primary. It was a wake-up call. Bobby Kennedy was reluctant to get in the race. There was a lot of pressure on him to get in. He was, after all, the brother of John F. Kennedy. He was a U.S. Senator from New York. He was an increasingly effective voice against the Vietnam War, but he had real reservations. He didn't want to split the party. He had bad blood with Johnson that he didn't want to make any worse. And something deeper, he wasn't really sure he was up to it. He'd always been the brother protector. He'd been the guy who worked behind the scenes to protect his brother, to help to do in campaigns the dirty work, even handing out the money in the old days. And he was not a big public figure. He was not this glamorous, charming man that his brother had been. But he was under a lot of pressure to carry his brother's torch, to run against Lyndon Johnson. And he finally, in March of 1968, decided, after having said he wouldn't do it, decided he would do it. He got a late start, but his campaign was an instant kind of spectacle and sensation. It was a very hot campaign, huge crowds, people yearning for the memory of his dead brother, people who were fascinated by this man who was in many ways shy. His hands shook when he had to grip the podium to keep his hands from shaking when he gave a speech. He was uncomfortable around people, and yet he conveyed a sense of fierceness and a sense of vulnerability that was very effective. He was that unusual thing. He was a white candidate whom black voters really loved. He attracted big black crowds. And he could do something very unusual. He could get the votes of steelworkers and blue-collar whites and blacks. That was unusual in 1968 to be able to put that together. And so his campaign sort of rolled along, picking up steam in a way that was scary to some people. Now, the security on it is, by modern standards, laughable. He had a bodyguard, a former FBI agent named Bill Barry. He used to hold, and they were in open cars, convertibles, and Barry would kneel and hold Robert Kennedy by the waist as he knelt. In fact, Ethel had to put a pillow under Barry's knees because he ended up hurting his knees. Crowds would just come in and sometimes pull Kennedy right out of the car. I think we've got a photograph of it here somewhere. During the course of the campaign, they would rip off his cufflinks. They would tear his shirt. They pulled him out of the car. He chipped a tooth on a curb. Can you imagine? One lady reached in and took his shoe. It was just wild. I have some photos in my book, and I think I've seen them up there. It was just a kind of a free-for-all. When Bill Barry hurt his back, they got a little more security. They got a former football player named Roosevelt Greer, a great lineman for the New York Giants, and Rayford Johnson, who had been a great Olympic athlete. So they had a little more security. But when they went to Los Angeles, for instance, Kennedy had a bad relationship with Mayor Yorty, who had been a foe of his when Kennedy was Attorney General. And Yorty did not provide police protection. When they went into Watts, Kennedy was protected by a group called the Sons of Watts, a local black power movement. No cops. In fact, the LAPD gave Kennedy's motorcade a traffic ticket. So it was just kind of a free-for-all. Well, Kennedy won some early primaries. He lost in Oregon, and then California was the big one. He really had to win that in June of 1968. He did win fairly narrowly, but he won. He's at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. It's about 9, I guess it was almost midnight, when he gives his victory speech, and he says something about, we won tonight, on to Chicago, which is where the convention was going to be. Let's win there. Now, as he leaves the podium, Bill Barry tries to aim him out the front door, his one bodyguard, but there are some screaming girls, teeny boppers. Bobby was sort of a sex object. And girls would surround him, squealing girls, and they somehow separated Bobby from his bodyguard. The hotel maitre d' turned Bobby around and directed him not at the front door, but through the back into the pantry of the kitchen. Now, waiting there, sitting on a serving tray, basically, was a man named Sirhan Sirhan, who was a mentally impaired. He was a Palestinian, and as far as we know, he had once seen Bobby Kennedy on a TV broadcast outside a synagogue in Los Angeles wearing a yarmulke. And this somehow triggered something in Sirhan Sirhan and made him want to kill him. And he got a cheap handgun, and he just was able to sashay right into the kitchen. And just by luck, because Bobby was supposed to go out the other way, just by luck, he's turned around and comes in through the kitchen. Sirhan Sirhan fires wildly and got lucky. One bullet, I think it was a .22, lodged itself in the soft tissue right about here, went into his brain, probably instantly brain dead. It took him another 25 hours to die, but he was as good as dead right away. There was this wild melee to disarm Sirhan Sirhan. There's some photographs of that up there. And with that, I guess I'll turn it over to Art.
Thank you, Art. You've now gotten the call. All right, you're a 21-year-old Los Angeles police officer, 3 weeks out of the academy. What call did you get? What did you know when you arrived at the Ambassador Hotel?
Well, let me start off with my exact age. I just turned 21 on November the 20th, 1967. And this happened 6 months later, so I talk about being just. I graduated from the academy on May 17th, 1968, and this happened 3 weeks later. And basically what was going on is I was assigned to Rampart Division, and I was assigned to a watch called the Midwatch, and we started at 6 o'clock in the evening, and we went till 2:30 in the morning. Anyway, that about 12:15 on the 5th of June, we were at Vermont and 7th Street, which is in the Wilshire District area, and a call came out on the radio: all units in the vicinity, ambulance shooting, 3400 Wilshire. 3400 Wilshire is the address of the Ambassador Hotel. And we were approximately 5 blocks away from the Ambassador. So at that time, I was working with my training officer, and my training officer's name was Travis White. And I believe Travis only had like 2 years on the job. So we immediately turned on the red lights and sirens, and we traveled west on Wilshire Boulevard, and we got to the entrance of the Ambassador Hotel. And at the entrance of the Ambassador Hotel, it's a long entrance. It's a one-way going in and one-way coming out. So you drive in, and then you have to make a left into the main entrance where there's a big canopy. And we knew exactly where to go because at that time that used to be one of our eating spots. We used to eat at the little restaurant right there, and they used to, take care of us, you might say. So we go on there and we eat. So we park right in front. And as soon as we got there, there was kind of a crowd out there. And then my partner and I, we got out of the police car, and we heard this person yelling, "This way, officer, this way, over here." And we look over to our left, and here's this person. He was wearing a tuxedo, so we figured, well, he probably works here. Turned out later to be one of the maitre d's. So as we're looking, he's waving. He said, "This way, officer, this way. He's over here. He's over here." Well, at that time, all we knew was an ambulance shooting. So we have to assume that it was a call where somebody was shot, somebody was injured. So we started following him. And what we did is we didn't go in through the main entrance. We went through a side entrance, and it was sort of a ramp that went diagonal, that went up, and then it turned quick to the right, and then you went into an entrance. So all this time, this person saying, "This way, officer, this way. He's over here. He's over here." So we followed him. And what happened is we go into this doorway, and as soon as we walk into the doorway, we're in the pantry area, which is, and there's pantry tables to my right, and I think there was 3 of them. And I found out there was 3 of them later, but I only was able to see the one. But as soon as you walked in, there was people all over the place. They were yelling and screaming. People were crying, and that person, he's saying, "He's over here, officer. He's right there. He's right here. He's over here, officer." And he's pointing. And what he's doing, and he's pointing to this pantry table. So we walk in, look directly to the right, and there's this group of people on top of a pantry table. And then we look, and there's one person has this one person in a headlock. And then there's one person, turned out to be Rosie Greer, was on top of this person laying on him with his body. And then there was somebody who was holding his legs. So, and then there was a group of other people that were in front. They were trying to hit him. They were hitting him. And then, so the person that was telling us, he's over here, officer, he's over here. He said, that's him. He did it. So, okay, we got it. So we had to get in there and get this person out of here. Still don't know who he is. So next thing I know, we're pulling people off. Well, here I was, Rosie Greer, he was a big guy, little guy, Back then I was 175 pounds of steel, But, hey, Los Angeles Police Academy, one thing I can say about that, when you come out of there, you come out of there in the best of shape you will ever be in your life. And I felt it then. So anyway, the bottom line was Rosie Greer was very emotional. I knew he was crying. He was like on top of him, and you could tell that he was crying. He was holding on to him. So naturally, I asked him very nicely, would you please, But we asked him, get off of him. And then we were able to get Sirhan, which later we found out it was Sirhan. Took him off the table, and we wheeled him around, and he was facing, and I took my handcuffs off out of my utility belt, and I handcuffed him. I was the officer who actually handcuffed him. And I handcuffed him with my handcuffs that were issued to me 5 months ago at the academy. And can I, please, just so you know, these are the original handcuffs that I had that day. They're Smith & Wesson handcuffs. They're serialized, and the little cap piece up there is it's a policeman cap piece, and that handsome gentleman there, that's me. And back then we used to be called policemen because it was policemen, police women, but when they started hiring more females, we changed it to police officers. So back then I was a policeman, and those are the original handcuffs. I'd put them away because I figured when I retire I'd put them in my shadow box, but now I'm going to donate them to the museum. But so anyway, it was my honor. It is really an honor to know that my handcuffs and what I did is being focused at this event here. And thank you very much.
You're welcome, Mark.
So anyway, so I handcuffed him. So here we have Sirhan, and people are coming over us and trying to hit him, and he's a killer, and we were hearing all these kind of things. But in the background, I did remember one thing. This person kept on saying, we don't want another Dallas. We don't want another Dallas. And I kept hearing, we don't want another Dallas. So, but that was just one of the things I was hearing. So anyway, my partner says, well, we got to get him out of here. So you got to, here's the pantry. And if you look at this diagrams here, the pantry wasn't that big of an area. It might be the size of this area right in here. Well, we didn't know it at the time, but Robert Kennedy was still lying in the floor over here with the other people that were shot. But there was so many people there, you couldn't see, 3 or 4 bodies ahead of you because everybody was all over the place. It was yelling and screaming. So our main responsibility was this person. And
Art, tell them what you told me about the gun, too.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, we have Sirhan, it's handcuffed, and we're trying to figure out here. And then my partner says, where's the gun? Who has the gun? And then somebody said, Rayford Johnson has it. And then where's he? And he says, well, I got the gun, but I'm not going to give it to you. I'm going to take it to the station, to the police station. So, we got him. We got people trying to get to him, and he doesn't want to give up the gun. So I said, okay, keep it, keep the gun. You can have it. We got the guy, So anyway, we ended up with Sirhan. So my partner says, well, let's get him out of here. So this another person, maitre d' with a suit, says, well, you can go out this way. And he points this way. So we look, and there's this big double door. Well, so here we go. And my partner says, you lead the way. So coming right out of the academy, I was very versed in baton tactics and, using my baton. So I started pushing the crowd with my baton. And back then, the baton was just a straight stick with a rubber grommet on it. And it was kind of interesting. But so anyway, I legged away. And here I open up this door, and we walk right into the colonial room where he had just given a speech. I mean, it's like walking in, and here's this room with all these people. You know, they're crying, they're emotional. And here we come walking out with a guy that's handcuffed. So what do you think happened? You know, oh, my God, that's him, that's him. So they're trying to get at him. And so I'm trying to push people back out. So we go through the crowd. It would be like breaking right through, like, you know, breaking the water here. Everybody out. So we went right through. And then there's some steps, because we were like in a second floor area of the Ambassador Hotel where the colonial room is. And then you have to go down some winding stairs that takes you into the hallway, the main hallway of the hotel. So as we're going down, you might be able to see, might show some video on it, but as we're going down, people are still trying to grab at this person. You know, they're hitting him and stuff like that. My partner has him on the right, and some other officer has him on the left, and I'm in front. So as we go down, we're walking through the main lobby, and people, it's like walking through a gauntlet. You know, you're walking, and people are just, you know. So I'm, okay, you hit me, so you know, like that. So I'm going through, breaking, and finally we get out into the entrance where our cars park, our police cars there. So I'm the first one there. But like they teach you in the academy, says, you know, whatever you do, you don't leave your car unlocked. So guess what? I had to unlock the car. So they're trying to get my keys out of my belt. I'm putting the keys into the right front passenger door. I opened it up, opened up the door. I had to unbutton the button. I opened the door, the right rear. We get Sirhan, we throw him in there, sit him down on the right rear. And then I come around to the left side. Guess what? The door on the left side's locked too. So now I got to use the key to get in the driver's door, unlock that door, and then I get into the back. I open the door, get into the back seat. So I'm sitting in the back seat with Sirhan. He's on the right, I'm on the left. He's about as close to me as he is, as Steve. So anyway, here we are. So then my partner gets into the car, the driver, and all of a sudden, this person gets in. He's wearing a suit. And he just gets into the police car. And I'm looking at this, but, you know, I'm not saying anything because I figure, well, maybe, you know, my training officer, but we didn't say anything. So anyway, this person gets in and he's wearing a suit. We lock the doors and these people are just hitting the car and hitting the windows because the windows were rolled up and everything. So they're hitting on the windows, you know, he did it, kill him, you know, and all these other kind of crazy things. So my partner says, okay, we got to get out of here. So he turns on the red lights, and then the lights start flashing, and some people kind of back off. He buzzes the siren. And back then, we didn't have these electronic sirens. Back then, we used to have these round sirens where they used to go around like this. Well, back then, you know, when the sirens got real old, we used to have to stick paper in them so the siren wouldn't blow when you were driving. You know, because, you know, the wind would cause it to blow, and they would go, oh, you know. So we had paper. But anyway, this time we had these. So we turned the siren on, and it, you know, so it went on a couple of times. People backed off. And then we left. We left the Ambassador Hotel. So at that time, like I said, you know, all this was happening between us, Sirhan, and I didn't know what had happened, who had been shot or anything. All we knew is that this was the guy that did it. Okay, so we knew that. We had the bad guy. So, are you raising your hand?
I am. I have a question. How long?
Can we get questions?
Sure.
Can I ask about how much time passed from the time you got hold of Sirhan and were able to get him into the car? Do you remember that?
Well, let me tell you, it was pretty fast, but
Art, if I might, just for our audience and television's sake, the question that was asked is, what was the timeline after you had gotten to the hotel, and how long did it take to get Sirhan out of the hotel into the car?
Well, you know, we were talking about this. The call actually came out about 12:15. I figured it took about 20 minutes to get to the Ambassador and up to the pantry area. So from the time that we actually handcuffed him and got him out of there, I would have said it probably was 15 to 20 minutes. That was that fast. And it was all through a crowd of people. So 15 to 20 minutes for the time that I got him in the car. And if you think about it, it probably was a total of 45 minutes from the time that we got the call to the time that we actually got him out of there. So you can see how things were really moving fast. I mean, everything was just popping. So anyway, here I am, sitting in the back seat with Sirhan. we're driving off. We drive up out of the entrance of the Ambassador, and instead of going back on Wilshire, we went straight across and we went to Rampart Station. So on the way to Rampart Station, my partner says, advise him of his rights. So back then we used to have this little field officer's notebook with the admonition of rights. So I take out my little field officer's notebook and I look at him and I start saying, you have the right to remain silent, and I'm giving him his rights. But he's just handcuffed and he's basically just down like this, looking like this. So anyway, I'm thinking, I said, well, if you look at his picture, he looks Hispanic. Well, back there, everybody looked Hispanic to me. I've never seen a Palestinian before. So anyway, he looked Hispanic. So I said, well, maybe he speaks Spanish. So I started, said, hablas inglés, and he's still like this. So I had my flashlight back then, and what I did is I nudged him. I gave him a couple of nudges in the chin, and on the way back, and he's handcuffed like this, and he just looks at me like this and goes, I'll remember 3909. And then he went back down, and I go, and then now you think about it, 3909 was actually my badge number. So I'm thinking, I go, wow, with everything that's going on, this guy's getting choked. I mean, and like I said, 15 minutes from the time that we got him. I mean, he's seen all this, and this guy remembers my badge number. And I mean, I barely remembered my badge number. I only had it for 6 months. But this guy said, I'll remember 3909. In fact, in my retirement flyer, I have a little picture of him behind bars saying, I'll remember 3909. But, so anyway, he says that, and then so there we are in the car. So, and then I'm looking at this person, and I asked this person, I go, by the way, who did he shoot? Like I said, I still didn't know. I said, I still didn't know. I asked this person, I go, who did he shoot? And he turned and he goes, Bobby Kennedy. And I go like, whoa, And then I look at him and I go, by the way, who are you? And he goes, I'm Jesse Unruh. Well, I knew who Jesse Unruh was back then. I mean, I'd never really seen him, but I knew the name. I go, Jesse Unruh. And I go, oh, I was 21. What I care? You're 21. So I said, oh, okay. So then there we go.
So, Art, if I might just jump in, Jesse Unruh, for those of us who may not know, as I learned later, was the Speaker of the House of Representatives in California, one of their top legislators, and he was also the California campaign chairman for Bobby Kennedy's presidential bid. So obviously he was very personally affected by what had happened, and I assume that's probably why he jumped in the car where he saw the assassin being placed.
Well, yeah, we were talking about that too. We were saying, well, why did you let him get in the car? Well, with everything going on, what are you going to do? We're going to take this guy out, or are we going to just take him with us? So we took him with us. But any other time we would have thrown him out, of course, But so anyway, we get to the station, and we asked Sandra to get out of the car, and then we take my partner and I. There was a underground garage, and we take Sirhan out of the car, and we take him upstairs to an interview room, and we placed him in the interview room. And I took the handcuffs off of him, and my partner said, "Well, let's take everything out of his pockets." So between my partner and myself, we took everything out of his pockets. And as I recall, he had a $100 bill. He had a set of keys with a Chrysler, had a Chrysler key in it. And that night after Sirhan was taken, they asked us to go try every Chrysler car within the area of the Ambassador Hotel to see if this key fit any car. And it's really funny because we found a car that the key fit, but it turned out to be the wrong car. So we thought, we got the car, but it wasn't the right car. So anyway, they found the car because he got ticketed, and they found the car that he apparently had gone in there. But I also remember that there was a .22 long bullet, an unexpended .22 long bullet. Well, for those of you that don't know, the gun that Sirhan used was a Ivor Johnson 8-shot revolver, and it shot 22 longs. So he had that one bullet, I remember that, and he had some change, and that was about it. So we took everything out of there, and we started inventorying it. And about 10 to 15 minutes later, the detectives showed up, and they got all the items that we had. They grabbed them up, sort of like the Secret Service. They just grabbed everything up and left. But anyway, they came and they basically gave him a little story of what happened. And they took Sirhan, and that was the last time I saw him until I testified in court, which was the next year. And it was kind of interesting. But, one thing that I always keep thinking about in this situation is that, you talk about that one bullet. I saw that one bullet, and I said, well, if he was going to shoot him more people, or if he was going to shoot it out with the police or anything, he would have more bullets. He would have a pocket full of bullets, to unload and put more bullets in there and start shooting and try to get away. But he had one bullet. So to me, my personal opinion is that one bullet was for him. So, I kind of call him the first terrorist, because he was going to do what he had to do, and he had that one bullet there to, take care of his business and then end his life. But that's what happened. I mean, it's, there's a lot more. I was able to get the transcripts, and there's things that I forgot that happened, but this one thing that sticks in my mind is that, when he said, "I'll remember 3909," and to me, it's like, thank God he's still in jail, huh? He come after me, but it was just it was a point where you never know law enforcement. Law enforcement is a location where you can be where something might happen. I mean, everybody else, you go to your job and stuff like that. But law enforcement, you're out there. When you get called on a call, it might be something like this. I mean, some of them, I had 39 years and 4 months, but nothing was ever greater than this. And here I am 44 years later talking about this. So you never know. You never know what might happen, and you never know when you'll be a witness to history.
We hope you learned something from this episode and will join us next time for another edition of Encore, where we revisit past museum programs and conversations. A special thanks to all of you for listening to this episode of Encore, a series from the Precinct 444 podcast network by the National Law Enforcement Museum. Please subscribe to Precinct 444 on your favorite podcasting platform to stay connected and to receive our latest content as soon as it drops. We would love to hear from you. Send in your questions, comments, and feedback to precinct444@nleomf.org. You can help us make our content even better. The National Law Enforcement Museum is located at 444 East Street Northwest in Washington, D.C., and is dedicated to telling the story of American law enforcement. We expand and enrich the relationship between law enforcement and the community through educational journeys, immersive exhibitions, and insightful programs. Find us online at lawenforcementmuseum.org and stay tuned for more podcast content from Precinct 444. Until next time, stay safe. We'll see you at the Precinct.